Hi, today we will discuss transportation part 3rd of life process lesson. For the other parts of this lesson, part 1, part 2 and part 4, I'll give the link in the description box. Please watch it, like it and subscribe my channel for more interesting videos like this. In this lesson of life process lesson, we had discussed there are the few things which are important for the living organism. Like living organism need the nutrition, they need the oxygen for respiration to obtain the energy from the food. Now, in the unicellular organism, as they are made up of single cell, the cell is in direct contact with the environment. It can take easily the food or it can take the oxygen for respiration, or it releases the waste material, that is excretion, directly in the environment. But in the case of multicellular organism, like a simple multicellular organism which is made up of only few cells, there the outermost cells are taking the nutrition and oxygen for respiration and supplying it to the inner cells by the simple method called the diffusion. But this method of diffusion is not sufficient for the complex multicellular organisms which are made up of the millions of the cells, and the body structure is very complex. In such an organism, this process of diffusion is not sufficient because the diffusion is very slow process. As we had discussed earlier, in multicellular organism, they have the specialized tissues and the organs to perform a particular work. The same thing is true with in the case of this, supplying this nutrients, oxygen, removing the waste material from the body. They have a specific organ system called transport system. Let me discuss this in detail in this part of the life process lesson. Transportation in the human being. It is also known as a circulatory system. In the human being, circulatory system is also known as closed circulatory system because the transport material, that is the blood, it flows into the closed vessels like a blood vessels. The human circulatory system mainly contains the three components: blood, heart and blood vessels. Let me discuss this in more detail. Blood. Blood contains mainly the two components: a fluid part in which digestive food is present, along with that carbon dioxide, excretory material which are present in the dissolved form in the fluid matter of the blood, and it is called the plasma. Plasma also transports the salt in the dissolved form. Inside the plasma, there are the blood cells are there, and these blood cells are three types: RBC, WBC and platelets. RBC is a red blood cells. Yeah, so you can see here the picture. The first picture, the left side one, is a blood smear, and this is the where you can see the abundant pinkish color cells, and that is the RBCs. RBCs are also known as red blood cells. These are mature red blood cells are dead, concave shaped. These are. It contains a protein called hemoglobin. This protein contains the mineral iron, and that's the name hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the one which binds to oxygen and carries to the various part of the body. So as the RBC's function is it carries the oxygen from lungs to the various parts of the body to the each and every cell of the body. Next we are seeing in the same blood smear the small the few cells are there, very few cells with the purple color nucleus, and these are the WBCs. The second picture you can see the WBCs. WBCs are the white blood cells because these are the colorless cells. There are mainly the 5 different types of the WBCs are there: neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, lymphocyte, monocyte, etc. And WBC function is our body's defense. It is protecting us from the microorganisms. Then this human circulatory system, particularly in the blood vessel, if there is any leakage is there, in that case actually there is a third type of the blood cell, that is a platelets comes in the role. Whenever there is a leakage in the blood vessels, blood start oozing and it should be stopped. Otherwise, there is a lot of the loss of the blood. First thing. Second thing, it is the blood pressure also decreases. And to avoid that, the blood platelets will go there and it will clot the blood, avoiding the loss of blood from the leaked portion of the cells. Next we understand the human heart. It is a pumping system in the circulatory system. Now blood should be, as it should reach to the each and every cell of the body, as it is transporting the food from the digestive system, and it carries the oxygen from the lungs to the, it is carrying the oxygen from the lungs to the each and every cell of the body. And as it is happening, so there should be, the blood should reach to the each and every cell, and that's the reason it should flows in the, it should be pumped. And that pumping organ is the human heart. In the human heart, the oxygenated blood, that is a blood which is rich in the oxygen, and deoxygenated blood, that is a blood which contains less amount of the oxygen, is separated. It should be separated. It flows in the separately, right? So that's the reason there are the chambers are there, various chambers are there in the human heart, which will be separately the flowing, allowing the flow of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. There are totally the 4 chambers are there in the human heart. Upper 2 chambers are called atrium and lower 2 chambers are called ventricles. Right side of the heart, deoxygenated blood flows, while left side of the heart, oxygenated blood flows. Human heart is a very special organ made up of cardiac muscles. As you have studied in the last year in the 9th standard, cardiac muscles are a special kind of the muscles which continuously contracts and relax throughout the life. Now, whole human heart is not contracting and relaxing at a time. Atrium when contract, that time ventricle relax. When atrium relax, ventricle contract. You can understand the upper part of the heart when it is relaxing, lower part of the heart is contracting, and when the upper part of the heart is contracting, lower part of the heart is relaxing. This is happening rhythmically. And from the ventricle, the blood is supplied to the throughout the body, and that's why these ventricles have the thicker walls. In between the right part of the heart and the left part of the heart, to separate the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, there is a membrane is there between the right and the left part of the heart, and this is called a septum. In between the atrium and the ventricle, there are the valves are there. These valves will allow the flow of the blood only in one direction. That is unidirectional flow of the blood. That is only from atrium to the ventricle. It will not allow when the ventricle will be contracting, it will not allow the blood to pass to the atrium. Now let me understand how the human heart will work. Veins carry the blood. It collects the blood from the various parts of the body, and these smaller veins are combined to bigger and bigger veins, and the largest vein called the vena cava, it pours when the atrium relax. Vena cava pours the blood into the right atrium. When the atrium contracts, this deoxygenated blood goes to the right ventricle. When the ventricle contracts, from the right ventricle, deoxygenated blood is carried to the lungs for oxygenation through the pulmonary artery. In the lungs, the blood gets oxygenated, means the carbon dioxide is given to the lungs, and oxygen is taken from the lungs. So already we had discussed that into the respiration part of this lesson. For that, please see my video, the part 2 of the life process lesson. I had given the link in the description box. Once the exchange of the gases has happened, then this blood is again carried to the heart by the pulmonary vein. When the atrium relaxes through the pulmonary vein, blood is poured into the left atrium. When atrium is contracting, from left atrium, oxygenated blood goes to the left ventricle. And when the left ventricle contracts, the blood flows throughout the body. It is supplied to the largest artery called the aorta. Aorta, later on it is going on dividing, and it will supply the blood to the various parts. Now, as I told you, the separation of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is very, very essential, particularly in the organisms like human being, all the mammals and the birds, because these organisms need to maintain the constant body temperature. They maintain the body temperature constant irrespective of outer temperature. We call this organism as a warm-blooded animal. And to maintain the body temperature constant, their energy requirement is more. And as the energy requirement is more, the more oxygen is needed by this organism, the cells of this organism. And therefore, the separation of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is very, very essential in this organism. And that's the reason apes and the mammals have the 4-chamber heart. But in the case of the amphibians and reptiles, as these are the cold-blooded animals, means their body temperature is not constant. According to the outer environment, their body temperature varies, and that's the reason their energy requirement is less and little bit. So the oxygen demand is also less in them. So little bit of mixing of the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is permissible, and that's the reason these organisms have 3-chambered heart. These organisms have 3-chambered heart. In the case of the fish. They have only two-chambered heart. Now, one more thing I just want to tell you here, that in the case of the human being, blood goes twice in each circulation in the heart. Now, each cycle of the circulation, blood goes twice in the heart, through the heart. First, the deoxygenated blood, which is collected from the body, it goes to the right side of the heart. From the right side of the heart, then this blood is pumped to the lungs for exchange of the gases, and in the lungs the oxygen get absorbed by the blood, and this oxygenated blood is supplied to the left part of the heart. It goes to the left part of the heart, and then from the left part of the heart, this blood, oxygenated blood, goes to the each and every part of the body. So we are seeing here that twice the blood is passing through the heart in each cycle, and that's why the circulation in the human being is called double circulation. It is called a double circulation. But in the case of the fish, it is a single circulation. Why? Because in each cycle, the blood flows only once through the heart. You can see from the body, the blood is collected, and through the veins it goes to the heart of the fish, and from the heart is pumping the blood to the gills. In the gills, the blood capillaries, the exchange of the gases takes place, and then directly from the gills, the blood is supplied to throughout the body. So you can see here, the only once the blood is passing through the heart in each cycle, and that's why it is called a single circulatory system, and that's the reason in the heart of the fish have only two chambers. Let me understand about the blood vessels. As blood vessels are the, as I told you, the blood flows in the closed tube-like structure called blood vessels. These blood vessels are the three types are there: arteries, veins and capillaries. Arteries carry blood from heart to the various parts of the body, and veins are collecting the blood from the different part of the body, and it is transporting it to the heart. Capillaries are the very small blood vessels. These are very small, very thin, like our hairs, and these capillaries are very thin. The arteries near the tissues, it will branch and become the very thin blood vessels which have just the single cell thickness wall, and these are called the capillaries. As the capillaries are very thin walls, the exchange of the gases and the nutrients between the blood and the surrounding cell takes place through the capillaries. Let me see the difference between the arteries and the veins. As I told, arteries carry the blood from heart to the various parts of the body, and as the ventricle is contract, that time the blood flows in the very high pressure. The blood flows with a pressure in the arteries, and to withstand that pressure, the walls of the arteries are thicker and elastic in nature. But the vein carries the blood from the various parts of the body to the heart. The pressure of the blood is not much in the vein, and that's the reason that walls of the veins are thin and not so elastic. it is comparatively the rigid. As the blood flows in the arteries in the pressure, so blood will never flow in the opposite direction or the backward. It will always flow from the heart to the various part of the body. But in the case of the vein, as the blood is not flowing in the pressure, chances of blood is moving back to the again the cells or tissue is there, and that's the reason to avoid that backward flow of the blood in the veins have the valve. Veins have the valve. The valve will ensure that blood will flow from the veins to the heart, means from the point where it is collecting from the tissues and near the cell, and then it is moving in the direction of the heart only. Okay, so there is a one instrument called the sphygmomanometer, which will measure the blood pressure. As I told you, as the ventricle contract and then blood flows from the aorta and the largest arteries, and then with the pressure only blood goes in the arteries. It flows in the arteries. But as again I told you, it is the contraction relaxation of the heart is systematic. The ventricle contract, ventricle relax. When ventricle contract, that time the blood pressure is more in the arteries. And when the ventricle relax, blood pressure slightly reduce in the arteries. The blood pressure, when we are talking about here, when the ventricle contract, it is called ventricular systole. It is 120 millimeter of mercury for the normal person, and during the relaxation, that is a ventricular diastole, it is 80 millimeter of mercury in the normal person. But what happens to the person whose arteries are getting blocked? Because of the various reasons are there, and one of the main reasons for the narrowing about these blood vessels is deposition of the cholesterols in the inner walls of the blood vessels, and because of that the what you can see, the tube, the inner part of the this blood vessel become narrow and narrow and narrow, and that time what happened, the flowing the blood will become difficult, and it exerts a lot of pressure on the walls of the artery blood vessels, and this is called hypertension. It is called a hypertension. So you can see in the picture, the left side, the first picture, you can see this is the normal blood vessel, and the lumen, that is the tube structure inside, lumen is the broader one. And then you can see the second pic where the lumen becoming the narrowing, it is a pre-hypertension, and when it can become too narrow, the blood flows with a lot of pressure, and this is the hypertension. And during the hypertension, as the blood flows with the very high pressure in the blood vessel, the chances of rupturing the blood vessel is there. That is one of the chances. And the hypertensions have a lot of other side effects are also there. When the blood vessel get completely blocked, the supply of the blood to the particular region is affected, and the person may get paralyzed or stroke or the heart attack. These are the some of the disadvantages or the side effects of the hypertension is there. Now, other than the blood, there is a one more fluid is flowing in the body, and that also have that there is a parallel system, the transport system is there, and this is called lymph. The fluid is called lymph, and the transport system is called lymphatic system. So what is the lymph? Let me understand. Now, as we know, through the arteries, the blood is flowing from the heart to the various part of the body, the oxygenated blood. And these arteries are dividing and reaching to the each and every part. Near the tissue, these arteries will get extensively divided, and as I told you, these are very thin arteries called the capillaries. Capillaries are the single cell thickness walls. And through the this now again you can understand these capillaries are not in contact with each and every cell, but in the tissue these capillaries are there. So what will happen through this thin walls of the capillaries? Some of the component of the blood oozes out in between the gap of the cells of the tissues. So what are the component? The liquid part, mainly the little part of the plasma. Mainly it is a colorless, and in this plasma the digested nutrients are there like fat, glucose, amino acid, water, different ions, oxygen and all, and along with that even the few WBCs also ooze out. Now this fluid will be there inside the what you can say the intercellular spaces, and that's the reason it is called the tissue fluid also. It is also called tissue fluid or lymph. It ensures the supply of the nutrients to the each and every cell, and again the through this lymph or the tissue fluid, the waste materials like excess of the water, carbon dioxide, etc. will be again go back to the capillaries. What happened to the tissue fluid? What happened to the tissue fluid later on? The tissue fluid will be again the pass and then it will enter into the parallel vessels called the lymphatic vessels. And these lymph vessels will join together and become the bigger and bigger lymph vessel, and this largest lymph vessel pour its content into the largest vein, that is a vena cava, and again thus this fluid go back to the blood. So this cycle will be going on. Yes, you can see this. You can see this pic here. So as I discussed here, this is a circulatory system of the body, and from the capillaries the fluid will comes out. This is called the tissue fluid, and then it will be circulated into the intercellular spaces in the tissue, and later on it will drained into the lymph vessels. Lymph vessel joins, where the many lymph vessels join at a point called the lymph node, and they become the bigger and bigger lymph vessel. And this lymph vessel later on it pour all its content into the largest vein called the vena cava, and this system will be going on. Now the function of the lymph, it ensures the supply of the nutrients to the each and every cell of the body. Second function, as the lymph contain the WBCs also, so it is ensuring the protection, the defense for the each and every cells also. So in the tissue part also, so where the capillaries cannot reach, lymph will ensuring the defense. And one more thing is there, the fatty acid and glycerol, which are the product of the digestion of the fat. It will be carried through this blood, and in the capillaries that fatty acids and the glycerol, also the fat will also get oozed out into the lymph or the tissue fluid, and this tissue fluid is taking this to the storage organs like the what you can see the below the skin and all thing, it will get stored. Now let me understand transportation in the plants. In the case of the plants, as the plants are stationary, and therefore you have studied in the previous year that most of the tissues in the plants are the dead. So energy requirement in the plants is less compared to the animals, and therefore the transportation in the plants is little bit the slow process. It is not like the so fast in the animals. Right. And as the plants are needed the raw material for photosynthesis like carbon dioxide and water. So we had discussed, you have studied already this in the first part of this lesson, the nutrition, that plants take the carbon dioxide from the air through the stomata. But about the water, when we are talking, the roots of the plants absorb the water and minerals, because the very closest supply of the water and minerals for the plants is the soil. The roots of the plants absorbing the water and minerals from the soil, and that should be supplied to the site of the photosynthesis. The water should be supplied to the site of the photosynthesis like the leaves. And then from in the leaves of photosynthesis, during the photosynthesis, food is produced, and that food should be supplied to the each and every cell of the plant, and that is this transportation of water from roots to the various parts of the plant, and the food from the leaves to the various parts of the plant is done by a special kind of the tissue, and this is vascular tissue. Vascular tissue is the two separate tube-like structure. One is for conduction or transportation of water and minerals is called the xylem, and the other, which will transport the food and other substances, is called the phloem. Xylem and phloem you have studied in detail in the 9th standard. Now, how this water is transported in the plant? Now, in the roots, there is particularly the very fine root. There is a root hairs. There is a concentration of the ions increase. It absorbs the ions from the other cell, and in this water absorbing part, that is in the roots, the concentration of ion increases. As the concentration of the ion increases, it becomes the hypertonic solution. The water from the surrounding soil will enter the roots through the osmosis, and then as the water is entering in the root hair through the osmosis, the water level in the root hair increases. So this root, the water will be transported to the xylem of the root, and steadily the water will be flowing upward because of the water pressure increase into the root hair. But this type of the transportation, which mainly occur due to the osmosis and then the diffusion, it is not sufficient for the large plants. It is sufficient for the smaller plants to supply the water to up to the part where the photosynthesis, that is the leaves, supplying the water to the leaves. It is possible in smaller plants, but the very tall plants like the trees and all things, only this water pressure due to the root pressure is not sufficient to supply the water to such a tall trees. Then there is one more mechanism is there through which the plants uptake the water, and that is by transpiration. You have studied already previous years also, and in the nutrition lesson also I told you, through the stomata during the daytime, excess amount of the water is released in the form of water vapor, and this process is called transpiration. This is called transpiration. When the water is lost from the stomata in the form of water vapor, Then the stomatal cells will be, the guard cells will be absorbing the water from the nearby cell, and thus the nearby cell absorb the water from the xylem, leaf xylem. Then leaf xylem will suck the water from the stem, and stem xylem is sucking the water from the root. So like this, there is a suctional force is created, and because of that suctional force effect, the water from the roots will reach to the such a great height in the case of the trees. And that's why transpiration plays a very important role for transportation of the water in the tall trees. But what about during the night time? Because you know that during the night time the stomatas are closed. So during the night time the water is transported by that diffusion. The water pressure is the method through which the water is transported, but that is a very slow process. But during daytime, transpirational pull is the one which is more important to transport the waters to such a great height. How about the movement of the food? The transportation of the food takes place in the phloem, particularly the phloem, the companion cells and the sieve tubes, which are the long tubes which are connected throughout the body. And this phloem transport the food from the leaves to the various part of the body. This is the small experiment I am showing to prove that the phloem cells tissues are transporting the food. So here the healthy plant you have to take. You can take select the potted plant also, or just a twig of the plant which can grow in the water. And what you can do here, just remove the outermost bark of the plant, complete the circle. Only xylem is remaining. A potted plant you do, the beautifully it will come actually. And then what happen? As the plant will be growing and everything normal. But after few days you see the ring of the bark where it is removed. From there, the above part you are seeing, actually the upper part you are seeing, it is little bit swollen. Why? Because the leaves which are present in the upper part of the stem, right, it is producing the food and it is transported downward. But as the bark is removed, that is the phloem part is removed here, so what will happen? It will not no more goes back down. So it gets stored here. That is how the swollen tissue we can see. Now when we are talking about transportation of the food, it is also known as the translocation. Now the transportation of the water we had discussed that it will just the passive, because of that is suctional pull of the transpiration, and then the due to osmotic pressure the water is moving upward. But the movement of the food will not take place in like that. The passive movement, it is not there. It is an active movement of the food takes place. And for the transportation of the food, the energy is expended, spent in the form of the ATP molecules. The energy is spent in the form of ATP molecule. Right? And one more thing, it is I just wanted to tell here, the transportation of the food takes place in the both upward and downward direction takes place. We can see now the difference between transport of material in xylem and transport of material in the phloem. Xylem tissue help in the transport of water and mineral, and the phloem tissue help in the transport of food. Water is transported only in the upward direction from roots to the aerial part of the plants. So it is only upward direction. Food is transported in both upward and downward direction. Transport of water in xylem requires physical forces such as the transpirational pull. No energy is required for the transport of water. For transport of food in the phloem requires the energy in the form of ATP molecule. Thank you. Please like, share my channel and don't forget to subscribe my channel to get more interesting videos like this. Thank you.